A collection of horrible fates from Scary Interesting. Let's see this.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Scary Interesting. In this video, we're going to go over 3 stories of seemingly harmless contests
That's Crimson Video or Crimson Desert Video scary. Did he make one?
went horrifyingly wrong. And I may be
Can we
using the term
suggest videos
harmless
in Discord?
loosely
Yeah, there's a
because
channel
there's
for
no
it.
amount of
I
money
don't-
that could get me
I'm gonna be honest. I don't look at it a whole lot, but you can put videos in there.
to participate in the first contest. You'll see what I mean, and as always, viewer discretion is advised.
Well, it's confusing. The mods made the channel weird. It's confusing to me. I don't know.
For more than a century, spectators and competitors have descended on Coney Island, New York for
Oh, it's
Nathan's
the hot dog-
famous
yeah, the hot dog
International
eating
Hot Dog
contest.
Eating Contest, which is held every 4th of July.
You guys remember, like, fuck, it's probably been like 20 years ago or something at this point, where it was that really skinny Asian guy that would eat the hot dogs really fast?
During which participants have 10 minutes to consume as many hot dogs and buns as they can. Before continuing on, take a moment to think about how many hot dogs and buns you could consume in 10 minutes.
Oh, so fucking many. Oh my god. Thinking about eating hot dogs is gonna make my mouth water, dude.
And with that in mind, consider this. Famous competitive eater Joey Chestnut set the record in 2021 by eating 76 hot dogs and buns
I can't
in
do
just
that
10
many.
minutes. For his troubles, Joey took home
They're
$10,000 in cash,
good.
and other than a little bloating and indigestion, he apparently suffered no ill effects from consuming so much in such a short time. Unfortunately, the
shape,
same
no.
can't be said for a young Florida man named Edward, who entered a much less traditional eating contest in mid-October of
Kobayashi,
2012.
is that his name?
We don't
He's
know
our
much
grandma's
about Edward's
favorite when he could
background,
watch
but
the
we do know
contest.
that he was
That
born
guy,
on May
yeah.
11th, 1980, that he was 32 years old in the fall of 2012, and that he had a 27-year-old fiancée named Natasha. According to Edward's friends, family members, and coworkers, he was funny, outgoing, and rarely passed up an opportunity for adventure and excitement.
Okay.
Maybe as a result of this, he didn't spend much time weighing the pros and cons when he heard about a bizarre contest being held at a nearby pet shop a few
didn't
weeks
chew
before
their leg
Halloween in
ducks.
2012.
I don't know.
It's unclear why Edward didn't tell Natasha about the contest until a few hours before it was scheduled to begin at midnight on Saturday, October 6th. But either way, when he did, she apparently asked him if he thought it was a good idea when he told her what he'd have to do to win. But he assured her it was nothing to worry about and that as horrible as it sounded, it wasn't that big of a deal. He also told her that he didn't even want the prize and that after he won, he was going to sell it to his friend and
He didn't even want the prize. He just wanted those delicious hot dogs.
pocket the cash.
I get it.
The contest was organized by a man named Ben who owned a reptile store in a nearby city.
My grandma loves
By
watching
then, he'd
eating
been promoting
contests, The
the
World's
aptly
Strongest
named
Man every
Midnight
year.
Madness
I
event
love
for
watching The
weeks.
World's Strongest Man. It's cool.
During the contest, 30 participants would compete head-to-head in 3
Your
four-minute
grandma's
rounds.
based.
In the first round, they'd consume as many live crickets as
Ew!
they could.
Gross!
In the second,
Those aren't
they'd
hot
do the same
dogs!
with mealworms.
Ew!
But as disgusting as the first 2 rounds would be, they'd pale in comparison to the third and final round. For 4 excruciating minutes, when their
And
stomachs were already
roaches!
full of crickets and mealworms, they'd have to suppress their gag reflexes and choke down as many 3 to 4 inch cockroaches as humanly possible.
What happened to the hot dogs?
Now, you might be wondering what would compel someone to participate in this contest. But rather than a really awesome prize like a new car, an all-expense-paid vacation, or
What do they
even
win?
$10,000 in cash, instead, the victor would take home a female ivory ball python valued at only about $1,000.
Are they gonna eat the snake too?
Before leaving for the event, Edward made a last Facebook post in which he told his followers that the glory of winning was far more important than the snake or the money he'd get from
It's
selling
just
it
like
to his
animal
friends.
abuse. Have you guys seen those Chinese TikToks where they're like torturing the roaches in weird ways? This is like that.
Edward's snake-loving friend drove him to the contest in Deerfield Beach that night, and by all accounts, he was happy, energetic, and eager to get started when he arrived at the pet shop. After a dramatic introduction, the contest finally got underway around midnight.
I mean,
As
it's a cool
expected,
snake,
the
but
first 2 rounds were either incredibly disturbing or morbidly entertaining, depending on your perspective. The spectators watched as the contestants crunched and gagged their way through piles of crickets and mealworms. Nobody knew exactly how many insects each of the
Used to be a YouTube
contestants
channel where a
consumed,
girl would
but
step on
everyone
a rabbit
agreed
and
that
crush them with
Edward
their
was
heels.
squarely in
What
the
the
lead
fuck?
at the end of the second round.
Jesus. YouTube used to be
Apparently,
crazy,
while
dude.
the other contestants wasted valuable time chewing, he gave each mouthful a few chomps before washing it down with water. And to everyone's amazement, he wasn't showing any signs of slowing down going to the last round. At that point, all he had to do was repeat what he already did in the first 2 rounds, obviously with the exception that he'd be eating giant cockroaches instead of little crickets and mealworms. But once again, over the next 4 minutes, he diligently downed dozens of crunchy, goo-filled roaches. And when it was all said and done, Ben declared him the victor. This should have been a time for strange gloating, accepting his prize, giving a short victory speech, and doing whatever he could to get the taste of bugs out of his mouth. But as the award ceremony
Hold on, it's
got
almost
underway,
done, I
he
think.
stumbled away and disappeared. People listened intently as the announcer told the crowd
Is that what's gonna happen? They're gonna eat their way out of his stomach?
the winner was vomiting somewhere, and that they'd all
This
give him
contest for
congratulations.
$1 million. I don't think I would be able to keep it down. Like even if I tried, I don't think I'd puke.
When he came back. Everyone assumed that Edward would feel better when he emptied his stomach, and they'd all have a good laugh when he resurfaced to collect his prize. But after a heated bout of vomiting, Edward called 911 before collapsing on the sidewalk in front of the store. His friend eventually found him and yelled to the crowd that he needed help. We don't know how long it took for the ambulance to arrive, but Edward was barely conscious when EMTs took him away shortly thereafter. They did their best to stabilize his condition on the way, but sadly, emergency room physicians pronounced him dead just a few minutes after he was admitted.
Oh God.
It goes without saying that Edward's friends, family members, and his fiancée Natasha were stunned and heartbroken by his death. And so were the other
How did it
participants,
happen?
spectators, and employees.
Were
who
they
at the
alive? Were they
contest.
eating him?
Because he was otherwise healthy, some initially suspected that he might have had some sort of allergic reaction to the bugs or something they carried. But in the end, the medical examiner determined that he didn't die from an allergic reaction. Instead, he apparently died of asphyxiation when a clump of partially chewed cockroaches that should have gone down his esophagus became lodged in his trachea.
Ew!
By
Well,
November
great.
of 2017, the Chinese daredevil Wu Yongning
Also, he
was
could win
gaining massive
$1,000
popularity
snake.
on social media platforms for insane high-altitude
Oh God,
stunts.
I hate these. Seeing the picture of him standing on stuff makes like my balls tingle. I don't like heights. Heights are no go. Hell no. I hate these. I watch these before I go to bed and they make my fucking hands and stuff sweaty. I don't know why I watch these things.
This was so much so that he came across as invincible, earning himself the nickname the Chinese Superman. This air of invincibility was the product of years spent pushing his body, building strength, and learning how far he could push his own limits. He had trained in martial arts from a young age and developed the balance,
God, the
grip,
thing-
strength, and control that would later define his stunts.
Your balls tingle like the Spider-Man
The
fits.
feats
You guys don't get that feeling? It's like low in your gut, but it's like lower. It's like your dick and balls get like tingly, like little spiders are crawling on them or something. When you think of heights?
Performed were part of an internet trend known as roof-topping, where climbers scale skyscrapers, poles, cranes, and anything else without any safety equipment. And for some, the untethered climbing alone isn't enough. Once on a roof, it's not uncommon for roof-toppers to perform dangerous tricks like doing
Insane.
handstands on ledges or
It's a
dangling
primal
from the side of
response to the
buildings
thought
to
of
do
falling.
pull-ups.
Yeah.
Before
Don't like
roof-topping
heights or
ever
open
entered the
water.
picture
I'm
for
fine with
Wu,
water.
he had tried to break into television and film, landing small roles and stunt work that hinted at bigger ambitions. The payoff for those gigs was inconsistent, however, and the attention he wanted never quite materialized in those industries. Social media, though, completely changed all that. When Wu began posting videos of himself
I don't like
climbing
it.
and hanging off of skyscrapers, the response and the gratification were
Like, have you
immediate.
guys ever watched those videos of like people climbing the fucking radio towers? Speaking of, I saw a video yesterday of the guy that was like, they were climbing the radio towers and the guy got diarrhea, and so he shit off the side of the radio tower.
The clips were short and shocking as viewers watched him stand on ledges hundreds of feet above the ground with no visible safety gear, calmly posing
I
against
like the horror game
breathtaking
you
city
played with
skylines.
that. Yeah, that one.
Each video brought more followers, more attention, and eventually money, and what started as a risky venture quickly became a career. By late 2017, Wu had uploaded hundreds of
Because
videos
this
and built
Discord
a
is full of
massive
dudes who climb
following
up high
online.
things to fix infrastructure.
Sponsorships
Freaks me
followed,
out.
and with them came expectations.
Like, God, my hands are
The more
sweating
extreme
just
stunt,
seeing the
more
picture.
views it drew, but
I
he
hate
often
this
reminded
shit.
his viewers not to copy what he was doing, even as he continued to raise the stakes himself. Now, roof-topping may have been the world Wu was operating in, but he wasn't necessarily a pioneer in the trend. By the time his videos began circulating widely, the stunts had already earned a dedicated worldwide following of their own. The practice grew out of urban exploration, a movement built around accessing places most people never
Is it
see
the
up
purpose of the
close.
structure he's on? I don't know.
Over time, some
To be
climbers
tall
pushed
and freak
further
me
and
out.
higher, and cameras came along with them to record every death-defying moment. In China, platforms like Weibo made it easy for
Weibo.
Wu and his fellow roof-toppers to easily reach massive audiences, and the pursuit of more views, likes, and followers became part of each climb.
Urban exploration
As
is
you might
just
imagine, though,
gentrified
across the world,
trespassing.
roof-topping had already proven deadly for some
No, it's
participants,
cool,
but
though.
the risks hardly slowed the trend. And despite the inherent dangers, many climbers argued that the safety gear undermined the entire experience and turned something that was supposed to be raw into something that looked and seemed staged. By the fall of 2017, Wu's success online had translated into
It doesn't
real
look
income,
staged.
but it wasn't the kind that offered total financial security. Sponsorships and platform payouts depended on continued attention, and attention can be difficult to hold. Around that time, Wu agreed to take part in what was described as a roof-topping challenge put forward by a sponsor.
I don't like it.
Details of the sponsorship are scarce and they've never been fully clarified, but what was known was the prize. It was a substantial cash payout, reportedly around 100,000 yuan, or the equivalent of around $15,000 at the time.
Okay.
For Wu,
You can get a
that money
rabies
was
shot
crucial.
with that.
He was planning to propose
Hey,
to his
that's
girlfriend
hello.
the day after he completed the challenge, and he needed the funds not just for a wedding, but also to help cover medical care for his mother, who was seriously ill. With all of
Wanna
that at
see a guy
stake, on
climbing an
November
old
8th,
mining
Wu made
equipment?
his way to a building in the capital
Nope.
of Hunan province in China.
No, I don't.
At more than 60 stories, the skyscraper was one of the tallest buildings in the city.
I wouldn't
At
even
some
trust
point-
being inside a 60-story building in China, let alone fucking on the outside of it, dude. Like, fuck that.
That day, Wu took an elevator up to around the 40th floor, where he made his way outside and began climbing the side of the building. He managed to scale upwards of 20 floors before reaching the spot where he planned to film. What happened next was captured on video, and it's a horrifying clip. The footage, which is roughly a minute long, would not surface publicly until
Trust
weeks
being on the
later, but it
ground in
documented
China,
Wu's
yeah,
final
I
moments with
just
chilling
don't want
clarity.
anything to do with it.
In the recording, Wu reaches the roof and lowers himself back down over the edge, positioning his body
Oh, I've
carefully as he
seen
clicks
this
the ledge.
video!
He pauses for a moment, wipes his hands along the surface of the ledge, and then hangs fully off the side of the 60-story building with his arms extended above him. Wu then performs 2 pull-ups, lifting his body level with the roof each time. After the second attempt, however, something changes in his demeanor under pressure. He
They couldn't
fumbles
get up.
around for a foothold he can't quite find, and for a moment, it looks like panic sets in. He then tries to pull himself back onto the roof, but the effort falls short. He drops
lost
back
his
into a
grip.
hanging position, then tries again, but that attempt fails as well. As the seconds pass and his remaining strength fades, Wu continues dangling from the side of the building, and it appears that his grip begins to weaken. His hands slide along the ledge, and a faint sound, possibly a strained breath or a groan, can be heard on the recording.
Jesus Christ.
In the next few seconds, Wu would lose his hold entirely and fall out of frame. Later that day, his body was discovered by a window cleaner on a building terrace, leading police to conclude that he dropped roughly
Hell no.
45 feet. He'd suffered
It's
fatal
okay,
injuries
though.
and died
I
during
don't
or
think so.
shortly after the fall. When he didn't return home that night and failed to respond to calls or text messages, his girlfriend contacted the police the following day to report him as missing. But police would soon connect the dots, and she'd learn of his tragic fate.
Oh my god.
For weeks afterward, there was no public explanation for his disappearance. As days passed, his followers noticed
Someone
that
had
he
the
hadn't
goofy
posted in a while,
falling
and
scream and
questions
shut
about
up.
his whereabouts soon filled up comment
Shut the
sections
fuck
on his
up.
previous posts.
God. So
When his
scary.
final video was released by police in December
Falling
of
to your
2017,
death has to be
Wu's
so
sudden
scary,
lack
man.
of online activity became tragically clear. Once the video became public, reaction was swift and divided. For many viewers, watching Wu's final moments was deeply unsettling, but for others, it sparked broader questions about the online economy that helped fuel his rise to notoriety. His success wasn't unusual, as creators across the internet were pushing boundaries to hold attention and chasing views with stunts
I
that
don't
were
like it.
increasingly difficult to scroll by. Critics argued that the social media economy rewarded risk without accounting for consequences.
Yes.
This caused the line between performance and personal survival to grow thinner over time for Wu. But
Uh-huh.
although his widely circulated death and final footage may have created controversy over social media platforms, it did nothing to deter other climbers from continuing the trend of roof-topping, sometimes with tragic results.
Yeah, don't do that.
In 2019, a New York climber died
I
after
hate
falling
heights.
from a
Instant
6-story
no. Yeah,
building.
same. I would
In
never do
December of
any of this shit,
2023,
dude.
a French urban climber died after falling 68 floors from a Hong Kong building during a roof-topping stunt. That same summer, a 22-year-old Canadian man who claimed to have been addicted to roof-topping
Is
for the
that
better
what you're
part of
doing, Bags? Getting more and more extreme to retain our views? Bigger, grosser, hairier? I'm not getting bigger!
6 years, died during a climbing stunt. This is hardly an exhaustive list of accidents that have occurred during roof-topping ventures, but it illustrates
Is that
the
why you're
deadly risks
here?
climbers take when they scale structures for online clout. In the end, Wu is remembered as a daring climber, a viral star, and a young man trying to build a future for himself and his family. The Chinese Superman was just 26 years old when he captured his final footage.
Ugh, my hands. Makes me tingly.
In
I
late
hate it.
May of 2021, a Chinese ultramarathoner named Mao made one of the biggest decisions
Mao?
of her racing career.
Wait, that's his mate.
While more than 100 of her fellow competitors pressed on, she turned back just 24 kilometers into the 100-kilometer Gansu
Oh,
ultramarathon.
just 24 kilometers.
At first, she couldn't help but wonder if she overreacted. As she ran back to the starting line, she even thought about how foolish she'd feel when everyone else completed the race. But later, it would turn out she couldn't have been more right about her decision.
What happened?
The annual Gansu Ultramarathon was established to promote tourism and generate economic activity in Gansu province, which is located in one of China's poorest and least developed regions.
It's only about 15 miles.
What
do you mean only? Only ran 15 miles? You know how crazy that is?
Nearly a year of planning and coordination, the first race took place in 2018 in the rugged country outside the town of Bayan in north-central China. Despite many challenges, it went off without a hitch, and so did the subsequent races in 2019 and 2020. At that point, there was no reason to suspect that 2021 would be any different.
You're the military, used
like
to be long,
the earlier races,
used to
it
long
consisted
marches.
of
Yeah, the
three distinct
Navy!
events spread over 3 consecutive days. The first
sat in
was
a
a
fucking
5
chair,
kilometer run.
dude.
The second was a
What are you talking
21.1
about?
kilometer half marathon, and on the last day was the much more grueling 100 kilometer trail run. It's unclear how many participants signed up for the first 2 events, but we know that 172 racers registered for the Ultra. They were all relatively experienced athletes because each participant had to prove that they completed a similar race of at least 50 kilometers within the past year. Of those who entered, 31-year-old Liang Jing was by far the most well-known.
I walked from the back of the
He
carriage
was
to the front.
famous for
Yeah, I did
completing
that.
another 100
The
kilometer race
most,
in just
the most
6
I
hours.
ever ran in the Navy, we would do a mile and a half, and I could do that in about 10 minutes. I could do a mile and a half of like 10, 11 minutes, somewhere around there. But like at long distance, any more than that, nah, I'm dead.
And he also won a 400 kilometer race through the Gobi Desert in 2018. He had also actually won the Gansu Ultramarathon trail runs in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Now, the 100 kilometer race in Gansu was what's known as a single stage event. That means that competitors complete the race in less than 24 hours. Most of the runners were expected to finish in somewhere between 10 and 19 hours.
I don't even know how people do
but
that
again,
shit. I
for
get
elite
shin
runners
splints
like
so
Liang,
easy.
It would probably take between 7 and 9 hours. At least it would if everything went according to plan. The 2021 race was set in Yellow River Stone Forest, about 60 kilometers north of Bayan, and in many respects, it was the perfect setting for the event. The area is famous for its mountains, deep canyons, and thick forested areas, all of which are dotted with these towering stone pillars.
Cool looking.
But at the same time, the course was different than it had been in previous years. Some of the runners liked that the organizers changed the course from year to year because it made the race even more challenging and rewarding. On the other hand, a new route through new territory also meant new unknowns. In 2021 as well, the starting line was located in the park near the scenic viewing area, about 1,600 meters above sea level. That's about 5,000 feet. There would also be 9 checkpoints spread across the
I had
course,
to do a
though
mile
some
in high
wouldn't be
school. I finished
staffed
it in
during the
60 minutes
event.
because I walked it.
And
I
each
did that
section
too.
of the course presented its own unique challenges, but runners would face the most difficult
I
terrain,
didn't
the
exercise
biggest
until
change in
after high
elevations, and
school.
be the most exposed to the elements while navigating through the 8-kilometer stretch of high ground between the second and third checkpoints. If they ran into trouble here, they wouldn't be able to rely on shelter, hydration stations, or even first aid assistance. With that said though, each runner got a GPS device so they could communicate with event coordinators near the starting line in the event of an emergency. The weather had been relatively hot and sunny for the first 3 Gansu ultramarathons, but local forecasts indicated that it would be cooler, milder, and possibly wetter in 2021. On the night of Friday, May 21st, the day before the race, the provincial meteorological
I used to have to run 8 to 12 miles with a 60-pound pack in under 3 hours when I was stationed in Germany with the army. So I don't understand why my knees and back are busted. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that shit.
Center issued a low-grade wind warning.
Fuck that.
It predicted that wind speeds would hover between 30 and 50 kilometers in and around the area. Even so, nearly all of the participants had faced worse conditions in the past.
So
and
how did she
besides,
die?
what better way to up the challenge on an already
Weather?
grueling endurance race than by adding a little inclement
Or no,
weather?
she turned around, right? What
With
happened?
that also said, though, the report also stated that thunderstorms, lightning, heavy rain, and hail were a possibility, and that the occasional wind gusts might top 60 kilometers an hour. It's unclear who had access to the weather, or if some or all the information was passed on to the racers, but whatever the case, conditions remained mild and peaceful for the rest of the night.
She's the one that
It was
dodged it.
chilly
Everyone
and
else is
overcast
fucked.
the following
Is that what
morning when many of
happened?
the racers showed up wearing athletic shorts and t-shirts. Those who ran the
did
Gansu
they freeze to
Ultramarathon
death?
in previous years remember just how hot it was. They also knew that carrying unnecessary gear and clothes would slow them down and put them at a disadvantage. At the end of the day, every bit of extra weight they'd have would be weight they'd carry for 100 kilometers. And as for the official race manual, it stated that windbreakers and other poor weather gear were recommended but not mandatory. The temperature was 7 degrees Celsius or 45 Fahrenheit on the morning of Saturday, May 22nd, 2021, as more than 170 elite ultramarathoners stretched
Holy
and
shit.
warmed up about an hour before the race. By then, hundreds of spectators,
Imagine getting domed by
journalists,
a
event
large
staff,
chunk of
and
a
party
hail
officials
mid-run.
arrived to make sure that
That'd
the
be a bad
send-off was
time to
as
get
festive
hit,
and
I
dramatic
guess.
as it possibly could be. Then, at exactly 9 a.m., the mayor of Bayonne raised his hand skyward, looked over at the eager racers, and fired the starting pistol. All at once, the athletes began running down the rocky trail toward checkpoint 1. The first stage was pretty uneventful, but as it went, things changed quickly. The temperature was dropping, and the wind was picking up, and dark clouds were forming on the horizon.
So did they just all get just stuck in like frozen weather? Like day after tomorrow shit?
Was in the lead when he passed checkpoint 2 at 10:42 a.m. At the time, he was one of the few
Chinese people went on a run. Over 100 people died. Average day in Chinese history.
racers wearing a light windbreaker, and other than 4 elite competitors at his heels, pretty much everyone else was between 20 and 30 minutes behind. Around the same time, one early straggler was Mal. By then, things had changed so much that she was being pelted by sleet and rain, and the wind was so strong that she had to crouch over and place her palms flat on the ground to prevent herself from being blown away.
You're gay. Fuck you, Noble.
To make matters worse, the temperature had plummeted to near freezing, and it felt significantly colder with wind chill factored in. So, just 24 kilometers in, Mal made the difficult decision to turn back. To her surprise, though, most of the runners around her continued on into the rough weather, and unfortunately, the conditions were even worse up ahead. Shortly thereafter, things got so bad that the racers were shivering uncontrollably and losing feeling in their extremities. Some continued on, while others turned around and began heading back toward the starting line, which was at least an hour away. Those who turned back hoped the weather would improve as they descended toward the valley, and
just get
it
bad
did a little
again.
bit. But even despite this, the runners came across dozens of fellow racers strewn across the course. Some were dazed, delirious, unresponsive, and hypothermic.
Jesus!
According to some eyewitness accounts, a few were foaming at the mouth, and some even looked like they were already dead.
What the fuck?
And even those who were still moving looked like they wouldn't be in a matter of minutes. Meanwhile, the racers in the lead had reached the summit near checkpoint 3 about 2,200 meters or 7,300 feet above sea level. As visibility dropped to nearly zero, they veered off the trail and couldn't find their way back.
Oh, good.
At that point, it was
And
hard to
they're
ignore
lost
that
now.
the race was officially over and they were in serious danger.
Yeah, I think the race
All they could
ended
do
a
was
while
try to find
ago.
shelter, cling together to conserve body heat, and hope the storm relented before they all died. Race organizers received the first GPS distress signal at 11:50 a.m., less than 3 hours after the race began. But for reasons unknown, nobody ever responded. Shortly thereafter, the organizers got a WeChat message from another terrified runner who managed to find a pocket of cell phone coverage. A few minutes later, another racer sent a photo of 10 drenched and shivering runners huddled together somewhere along the exposed portion of the course between checkpoints 2 and 3. By then, with 3 distress calls, the organizers dispatched more than 24 search and rescue personnel who were on standby near the starting line.
This is crazy.
About 2 hours later, they guided 18 runners to a small lodge at the base of the mountain. However, nearly 150 racers were still missing, and the weather wasn't showing any signs of letting up. As this was going on, a local shepherd named Zhu spotted a number of racers on the mountainside near his grazing grounds. Some were unconscious by the time he got to them, but he managed to save half a dozen lives by guiding them to his home nearby. He even went back for others when the first group reached safety, but sadly, they were already gone by the time he got there.
Welp.
Meanwhile, as dire as the situation was, the organizers apparently didn't seek outside help until nearly 3 hours after receiving the first distress call. And when they did, a high-level official sent this vague and casual message to the mayor of a nearby town. Quote, "We need to bring winter supplies to the athletes." The mayor eventually passed the message on to a chief of a nearby village closer to the course, but it's unclear what, if anything, he did with it. 2 hours later, the mayor got a frantic call from the shepherd Zhu.
I'm noticing there is a trend here of, like, they requested help and no one responded. What is the point of the SOS messages and shit if no one reads them or cares?
Who told him just how serious the situation was. Finally, from there, the full-fledged rescue effort got underway. County firefighters were then dispatched at about 4:20 that afternoon, but they were 33 kilometers away and wouldn't get there until nearly 9 p.m.
What?
That meant that
Wait,
by then...
how far away are the firemen? It took them 5 hours?
County firefighters were then dispatched at about 4:20 that afternoon, but they were 33 kilometers away and wouldn't get there until nearly 9 p.m.
33, that's like 15 miles. How did it take them 5 hours?
That meant that by then, many of the runners had been out in the storm for almost 12
What
hours,
the fuck?
some in just t-shirts and shorts. Luckily, nearly 4 dozen racers survived by huddling together in a number of small caves between checkpoints 2 and 3.
Well, whoever wins this race should get like a medal or something. They should get a really cool trophy.
Despite this, though, by nightfall, they'd largely resigned themselves to the fact that they might not be found until the storm subsided, and that might not be enough time. Maybe the only saving grace was that an hour before firefighters arrived at about 8 p.m., nearly 60 local elderly villagers emerged from the darkness near Checkpoint 3. Unlike the hundreds of soldiers, police officers, and search and rescue personnel who eventually showed up with drones and thermal imaging equipment, they brought simple life-saving gear like sweaters, coats, and blankets. They would also find Liang Jing in a cave with 3 runners, but sadly, he was dead by the time they got there. The recovery effort would eventually include more than 1,200 people and lasted well into the following day.
Jesus.
It's unclear how many racers were rescued and how many made it to safety on their own, but in the end, 18 men and 3 women lost their lives that day.
Oh my god.
Of those,
It sounded like way more.
The other competitors. So in a tragic twist of fate, it was their speed that put them on a collision course with the storm at the moment it hit the most exposed portion of the course. In the aftermath
of fucking course, China's like, our marathon racers died because they were too fast.
8 additional runners were
that's what they
hospitalized
say.
with non-life-threatening injuries, and unsurprisingly, the tragedy caused quite a public outcry. The authorities offered the victims' families what were seen as meager compensation packages in the wake of the tragedy, but most allegedly turned them down because what they really wanted were answers and, above all else, accountability. Local and national
can still
authorities
accept
eventually
it.
launched a number of official investigations. Investigators would go on to find that many organizers did very little hands-on work leading up to the event, and they failed to oversee the actions of those who did.
Yeah?
They
Seems
also
that way.
concluded that all of the checkpoints should have been manned and stocked with food, water, and potentially life-saving gear, and that the members of the search and rescue team were inexperienced and ill-equipped.
Yes, I noticed
Tragically
that.
as well, some well-intentioned rescuers may have ignored runners who appeared to be dead simply because they weren't trained to spot the symptoms of hypothermia. As a result of all of this, a number of organizers and coordinators were eventually arrested and charged with crimes including negligence, bribery, and dereliction of duty.
Bribery?
At about the same time, China's Sports Administration temporarily suspended all high-risk sporting events, including ultramarathons, until organizers could prove that the proper safety measures were in place.
Who was getting bribed?
If you made it this far, thanks so much
Jesus
for
Christ,
watching.
man.
And a special thanks to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon or as a channel member.
Just crazy.
If you're
Just
interested, we
insanity.
offer early access videos that are released roughly a week before the regular YouTube uploads. Also, if you have a story suggestion, feel free to submit it using the form found in the description.
Probably everyone.
Anyways, thanks
Just
again, and
fucking
hopefully
me.
I will see you in the next one.
Good video. Thank you, Scary Ninja String. I'm gonna subscribe to them. I like that video. Very good.